When you settle a case with ABC Engineering Company, you would have paid the filing fee and those other incidental fees you just told me about, $10 for this, $1 for that, and so forth. What do you settle it for? And when I say what do you settle for, of course, I realize it's in negotiations, but generally stated, do you settle it for nothing? Do you settle it for the cost of your $413? What do you settle the case for?
Well, I've never sued ABC Engineering, as far as I know, but I assume you mean that just as sort of a generic placeholder. Um, it varies. The consistent elements of settlement are that the defendant has to produce the requested records without any further conditions. If they have produced the records post filing, because I've never, that's my recollection, I've never filed a lawsuit against someone who has produced the records and then I file suit. Although the case law is very clear, if the delay was unreasonable, the controversy is not mooted by that fact. But I'm very persnickety about the facts of cases, so I try to, I think take sort of an extreme approach to that. So if they've produced the records post-filing, then I would insist that they, in unequivocal terms, affirm that whatever records they produced are in fact all of the responsive records that all the records that would be responsive to my original request that led to the litigation. And the reason I do that is, as a requester, I don't really know what records somebody may or may not have that are responsive to my request. And what I don't want to do is settle a case, with a full mutual release, and they find out later that all they gave me was part of the responsive records. I want them to go affirm that either give me all the records or tell me you've given me all of them in unequivocal terms. Then I ask them to take some kind of remedial action, because my goal is not to go back and sue them over and over again. And usually what I suggest, and what most of them agree to, is obtaining the most recent edition of the Florida Attorney General's Government Sunshine Manual, and placing it and maintaining it for the duration of the contract, if they're a contractor, at whatever locations they create or receive public records. And the idea there is that in the event that I make another public records request or somebody else does, and there's some dispute about how they're supposed to respond, we have some authoritative resource we can turn to figure that out together. And then the third element, which is not is the one that's most subject to variance from one case to the next, is that in exchange for me waiving my right to be vindicated in court, very often they'll make a small monetary payment to me, from which I will cover my costs. But there have been a number of cases where I've settled without getting a penny out of it.
Well, don't you, when you settle, a settlement, of course, is a settlement. Don't you, when you settle, get what you can get, whether it's $1,500, $2,000, $3,000? Isn't that the way you do it?
Not always. Depending on the facts, and the facts are always good, or I wouldn't file suit. I mean, what I call a kill shot. I mean, it's unequivocal. There ain't no doubt about the law on this and the facts. I don't file suit unless it's crystal clear as to what the right outcome should be based on the case law. But depending on the defendants, there have been some that seem genuinely to be doing good work and seem genuinely interested in resolving the matter and fixing the problem, which is really the ultimate objective. And I've dismissed the cases with nothing more than their assurance that they're going to fix the problem and produce records, and I didn't get anything out of it. But yeah, if you're dealing with a company that has gotten paid hundreds of millions of dollars of tax money, and part of the thing they've been paid to do is to serve as a custodian of records, and during the litigation it becomes very clear that not only have they not fulfilled that part of the contract, they never intended to. If they want me to forego my right to be vindicated in court, then I'll ask for a monetary settlement. And I'm completely unapologetic about that. When I first started looking at state contractors, for example, when I first started making requests to state contractors, all of whose contracts explicitly make them subject to Public Records Act. If the contract doesn't make that clear, then I don't bother. The compliance rate, again, for people who unequivocally are subject to the Public Records Act, the compliance rate to public records requests is about 2%. The most recent set of requests that I made to state contractors, it was very small, but I had 100% compliance. And I believe that that is entirely a result of the litigation that I've done over the years. I think it's important to note, as sort of put this in context, that state agencies don't audit their vendors for compliance with the contracts. They make no effort to do that. And I feel that I have single-handedly been able to accomplish what more than 100 state agencies are unwilling or unable to do, and that is to bring contractors in compliance with their obligations under the Public Records Act. And I am completely unapologetic about those defendants financing what I do. They ought to be the ones paying for it. It certainly shouldn't be me. I've gone broke doing this, and it certainly shouldn't be the taxpayers. So if some defendant violates the terms of their contract and violates the Public Records Act and public trust, and they want me to forego my right to go to court to have a judge say that they broke the law, yeah, sometimes it'll be $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,500 or whatever. And I'm completely unapologetic about that. If I thought I could get them to pay me $50,000, I'd ask for that. They're not doing their job, a job they've been paid to do. And the state's not doing its job, making sure that they're not ripping off the taxpayers. And that's why the most recent legislative changes, I think, are a formula for disaster. There is already a lot of fraud going on with state contractors. Now that it's much, much more difficult to get access to their records, I have no doubt that there will be a lot more fraud. And I use that word deliberately. Taking money to do a job when you have no intention of doing it is fraud.